Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to draft a vintage inspired dropped shoulder. My name is Charlotte and this is the School of Pattern Cutting. This tutorial was of course chosen by you over on Instagram, so if you don't follow me already, please do so at Charlotte_School of Pattern Cutting, and there's lots of tips and tricks and also ways to get involved and vote on tutorials. And the sleeve you chose is really beautiful. It's a late 40s, early 50s dropped shoulder, and it's quite your new look influenced, but it looks really sophisticated and it's easy to make. And I got really excited by this style because it is very sophisticated, but it really shows you how you can use quite straightforward pattern cutting methods to create quite interesting styles. And at the moment I'm really excited. I'm just started to open up the vintage pattern cutting masterclass again. It starts on Tuesday. There's 15 places left, and one of the styles is the bolero jacket, and it's a really simple, beautiful vintage style which teaches you quite a lot of straightforward, beginner-friendly pattern cutting techniques. But the great thing is, once you understand these techniques, you can then adapt that bolero jacket into this really sophisticated looking new look T-bar influenced jacket. So today I'm going to show you how to do the shoulder section of that jacket, and I'm also quickly going to draw out how you can actually use your pattern cutting skills to first of all draft a simple jacket, and then you start adapting it for the T-bars inspired style. And if it sounds like it might be just your thing, please do have a look at the vintage pattern cutting masterclass. In it there's 5 vintage inspired styles. You learn to draft the whole style, so you learn 20 drafting methods, but of course you can then use these drafting methods to draft anything you want, whether that's vintage inspired or contemporary. There's 50 lessons, so there's lots of things to learn, but most importantly you always learn the why as well as the how. So by the end of it, you don't just have to draft what I tell you to do, but anything you see, like this 1950s dropped shoulder. And now I'm going to show you how to actually draft it. Let's have a quick look at this beautiful style. The reason I love it so much is because it's a great example of how you can start with a very beginner-friendly style like this bolero jacket, which I'm going to sketch out first to show you how it's all related. And then as you progress your pattern cutting, as you learn more, you can adapt these pattern cutting skills and you can create quite complicated looking styles. But because you have the why, the knowledge, the understanding on how to do it, it will seem really easy. So you can start by learning something like this bolero, and then as you on the vintage pattern cutting masterclass, and as you progress to the different styles in the vintage pattern cutting masterclass, you will learn how to already do a lot of the pattern cutting on here. And the best bit is that in the live Q&A, if you're interested, we can actually go through this whole style and recreate it. Because what I love about it, it has all this sort of Christian Dior bar jacket, new look influences, but it's a lot easier to draft than the original. So let's quickly draft this jacket on top of here, just so you see how similar it is. So the main construction is very similar. What they've done is, instead of our dart, they've added a dropped shoulder and a style line. So that's similar to skills you learn on the trapeze dress and also a topper coat, which is what's great about learning how to pattern cutting, because all the methods can be applied to other skills. So once you've learned the methods behind one style, you can then apply it to others. And then it's like a bolero, but it's been extended into a jacket, and they've drawn it quite accentuated, but it's basically like that. And the seam is like this, and then they've also added an extra dart for more shaping. So you can see how quite a simple beginner-friendly style like the bolero jacket, you can then, as your pattern cutting skills progress, transform into something like that. And then it's got this really nice not collar style. And again, it looks very sophisticated, but if you're interested in learning how to do it, I'm not going to show you now. I'm going to concentrate on the sleeve. But the great thing about the Vintage Pattern Cutting Masterclass, it comes with a live Q&A, actually two different times. So if you want to, for example, really want to learn that collar, we can talk about how you can adapt this style to get that collar. And if you also want to, we can talk about how to actually recreate the whole style. But now you know how this looks like and how the sleeve works. Let's draft that sleeve. Start by tracing around all your blocks, and we need all three. And the first thing we're going to do is draw in some design lines. So we're going to replace our satin sleeve with a dropped shoulder sleeve, and that comes out of, first of all, we have a style line which goes parallel or slightly angled to a center front. That's up to you. And I'm going to just draw it up to the top, and then at the back you can mirror it, or you can replace it, or even just keep your satin sleeve at the back as well if you want to. There's lots of little variations you can play around this. If there's one you really fancy, let me know, and we can have a look at another time. So for now, what you need to know is you need to know how much ease you have on each sleeve. I've got it marked already on mine. If you haven't got it marked, then you can walk your bodice against your sleeve block. So you compare your armhole to your sleeve head, and you work out exactly how long the armhole on your bodice is compared to your sleeve head. You might have no ease, or you might have 1 or 2 centimeters, or you might have a lot. The next thing we need to do is, now we basically prepared our sleeve and we've drawn in our first style lines. Then all we're going to do is draw a continuous style line which goes from here, and then it continues in that sleeve and it goes across to here. So what I'm actually now going to do is I'm going to cut my sleeve out. I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm also gonna draw in a curve either side which meets halfway down my sleeve head, and then I can draw in my dropped shoulder style. So you can see I've cut everything out and I've split my sleeve in half and taken off the ease. And it can seem a bit scary if you haven't done much pattern cutting before, like adapting your sleeve like that. But that's a great thing. As you build up your skills, you sort of understand what you can do and also why you do it. And that's why in the Vintage Pattern Cutting Masterclass, I've included 2 styles who really deal with that. The trapeze style, where it's all about creating a raglan style. So you're going to do something similar, but we're actually going to take it off here rather than off here. And then the topper coat also has a really nice dropped shoulder and an extended bodice width. So you learn how you can play around with your sleeve, because I think a lot of people always tell me that sleeves are a bit confusing to begin with, or they seem a bit scary because they have all these ease and how they tilt and all that sort of stuff. So learning how to draft them is really good, because then you know what you can do and how you can do it. So now we've cut our sleeve in half. We're going to draw in our lovely curved drop shoulder. So I'm actually gonna start off. I'm gonna do my drop shoulder here where it meets, but of course you can do it slightly lower down as well. And I'm gonna start mine off with a right angle, because you always need, or you want, nice straight angles. So when you stitch it together, it gives you a nice curve, and it's these best practice insights, that sort of thing that lot of us pattern cutters do naturally, but we don't really talk about why we want a 90-degree, and that's what I've tried to do with the vintage pattern cutting masterclass as well. But I always talk about what is the best practice, so how to get it that professional finish so it looks nice and neat and everything matches. You have a true run, as people like to say. So I can even now draw a nice curve in, or again, what you can actually do is you can, to help you draw out how you want the curve, you can actually start with straights. So again, because here again we want like a straight line going to there. So what we can do is either start drawing a curve, or what I'm going to do is now from my top walk it all together, and then I can see this is roughly where it's going to hit. So I want to sort of know if I have a straight line here, it's going to look like that. And I think theirs is slightly more curved, so you might actually get away with a completely straight line, and because it moves around the body it will look curved. But alternatively, what you can do is, so I know that this point will match, and the only thing what you will have when you make your first trowel is you need to make sure when you stitch it all together it should look completely straight. If it looks slightly wonky, then you can redraw it slightly on your trowel. But in theory and in practice, this should give you a really nice line. But what you can do is curve that line really slightly, either this way, which is what I would do. So we're actually going to curve it up a tiny bit. So can you see it's quite subtle, it still looks more or less straight, but it will give you a nice curve effect. And when you do the same at the back again, and there's several ways of doing it. Some people like to chop it off first. I like to hold it on like that, and of course you can also tape it on if you want it for a bit of extra one. And then you draw in your line, and at the back I am going to do more of a straight line here. So you can see they're slightly different lengths, curves at the front and the back, but that will give you a really nice dropped shoulder. And now all I'm going to do is cut it all apart and then glue it all together. So you can see I've cut it all apart, and now the last thing we need to do is move our back over to the back bodice and then our front sleeve to the front. And there you can two options. You can either overlap it slightly, or alternatively you leave a little gap at the top, and then you add your little bit of piece of paper behind it, and then you redraw it. So it's about a bit of sort of nudging it together to know exactly the shape you want to do. And this is where you need to do a trowel, because that curve you might have to pinch out a little bit depending on your shoulder shape, all this sort of stuff, because your sleeve has some leeway, so it might either be a little bit too curved or less curved. And whatever you do, you basically always have to do the same at the front and the back so they match. And then you just put a piece of paper behind it and you draw a really nice curve, and you can see we've got the nice right angles where it matches. And then at the sleeve you can either put together as one-piece sleeve, or you can have a two-piece sleeve and add your Chanel-like cuffling there as well, which is lovely. So this is how to create that sleeve. Of course, this is a really quick tutorial, which for YouTube purposes works really well. If you want to have more of an insight of how now to actually add your seam allowance, what facings to do, why you might need some notches, the straight of grain, all these sort of really important annotations which turn your working pattern to sewing pattern, do check out my vintage pattern cutting masterclass, which covers all of that, so you get a proper full-on understanding about how to draft and then also stitch together your perfect wardrobe. So now you know how to draft a vintage inspired dropped shoulder. Just make sure you do a trial to check everything fits how you want it to. If you're now really excited about learning to draft more vintage inspired styles, please do have a look at my vintage pattern cutting masterclass. I linked in the description below, and don't forget there's only a few places left and it closes this Monday. So I'd love to help you draft your dream wardrobe this February and maybe even finish drafting the rest of this jacket in our live Q&As. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed these videos, please give me a thumb up. And if you haven't subscribed on here and on Instagram, please do, for lots more tips and tricks and tutorials. Bye!